to Learn Free Music Theory, lesson number 45. Today we're going to be talking about a nice little topic called ornaments. So let's just get right into it. Okay, so the first ornaments that we're going to look over are the appoggiatura and the accasciatura. Also, the accasciatura is actually known as the grace note also, commonly. So I'll just refer to it as the grace note since it's easier to say that. It's easier to say grace note than the other one. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what ornaments really are. And so just think about, okay, what are ornaments that we have around in our house? They're like decorations, right? You have Christmas tree ornaments, and those are decorations for the Christmas tree, right? And so that's a very good, easy frame of mind because, you know, pretty much everyone knows what Christmas is and they can visualize when you put an ornament on a tree or whatever. So it's a really great example to use. So it's not that the ornament makes the tree any more of a tree, right? It's that it decorates it and adds to it and kind of, you know, brings attention to the tree in a different way than it did before. So these are just two of the examples. We're going to be looking at a few more as well, but these are the first two. And so you'll see them throughout music, and what they'll look like is tiny, tiny little notes, okay? They're like these mini notes, okay? So imagine like there's a big regular size one and then there's a tiny little note. Like this one isn't drawn small by any chance. Like that's how small it would be compared to the other one. You're going to see these little tiny notes. And so they are appoggiaturas or accasciaturas or grace notes. And so basically, they're an ornament to the main note, or the principal, or the fundamental note, whatever you want to call it. So this note right here, say this is, you know, like it's C or something like that, okay? And say this is a D, so it's going da-dun, like that. Now, instead of just going dun, you have this little da-dun kind of thing, action going on. And so that's basically what they do, is they kind of they ornament or they decorate the main note, and they get more complex, of course, but it's just like a whole bunch of, you know, sparkly fluff to accent that one main important note. And you might be thinking, well, how can one note be more important than the other? But when you understand more about how harmony works and everything, some notes are stronger than other notes. They're not all equal. They have different roles and they do different things, and our ears hear them differently and all this other stuff. So it's quite interesting, actually. When I started learning a lot about ornamentation, I started having less fear about hitting a wrong note, actually, because all these appoggiaturas and these, like the grace notes and stuff, they actually sound very, like a lot of the times, they sound like you're playing a wrong note. But you see, in music, we have something called harmony and dissonance. And the dissonance comes when you have something that sounds ugly. It doesn't match with the harmony of the chord that you're playing throughout the whole piece. And so these accasciaturas and stuff like that, the ornaments in general, they don't always match up perfectly with the harmonies. They actually sometimes sound bad, but then they resolve to the harmony that sounds good, and then it actually, you're like, oh, actually I didn't mind that then. It's sort of the same sense as if you're reading a novel and it's like, and there were ponies and they were so wonderful and everyone lived happy ever after. You flip 50 pages later and it's just like, and they were so happy, they had lollipops and gumdrops and candy and muffins sprinkled with pixie dust, and you're like, oh god, what a horrible book. Well, not that it's horrible, but it's just like, so boring. So you take that to the other side, and, you know, if it's all gloomy all the time, well, that doesn't sound very good either. If it's just like, death and killing and death. Flip pages. Death and killing, more death and killing. Okay, that's very predictable too. But when you have a mix of like an antagonist, right? And you've got a story flowing where you've got a bad guy and a good guy and they're fighting it out and stuff like that, it makes things a lot more interesting, right? Like, how interesting would Star Wars be without Darth Vader? Right? And the Emperor guy. But you could have those guys, but then take away Luke Skywalker, right? And then bam, now you don't have evil versus good kind of story plot. Very predictable, but at the same time very engaging. So same thing here is that we have these little notes that they sound bad maybe at first, but they actually contribute to the music as a whole. of a whole. Yeah. Oh, gotta love not doing retakes. Okay, so now how the beats are determined is actually different with these different ones. So I just want to explain that. Okay, so the appoggiaturas here, if you just see one like this and it's joined to just a regular, regular note, like it's not dotted, nothing's being done to it, right? It's going to actually take 1/2 of that value and then divide it equally. So if you had this note here going to, going to the half note there. I almost called it a whole note. If you have that, now what's half of the whole note is a quarter note. So you're going to have 2 quarter notes evenly divided, and so you're going to go D, C, if those are the 2 notes that are written. Okay, so it's going to change based on whatever, piece you have there. So just, keep that general rule in mind. Okay, next, if you see that same note or a different note, whatever, and it has a dot, now the appoggiatura has 2/3 of the value. So look, so here this was worth 3 beats, so what's 2/3 of 3? 2. That's why I was using this, by the way, just because it's so easy. And then, so this is 2, and that's the third. So the appoggiatura, which is the small little note, now you're going to play it like this, but it's going to be written in the sheet music like this. Okay? Now, couldn't you just write it like this in the sheet music? Sure you could. But, this is a shorthand way of doing something, maybe a little bit easier. Like say you've written your notes out, you've written your whole melody line out, and you like all your main notes, and then you're like, oh, well, this note right here could use this, and it just add a little decoration. So why the advantage to this is you don't have to go back and rewrite your whole score, you just add this little notation in here. This note's already existing, and then you add this in there, boom. Now you've added a little bit of flair to it without having to rewrite anything. See? So it's kind of a shortcut in a way. So you have a main note, and then you have a basic ornamentation that you just pop on that note. So you're not changing or rewriting the note, you're just popping that ornamentation on there, and then bam, it sounds, a little bit different. So yeah. Okay, now, moving down, we have the accasciatura, or the grace note. Now, this one, I wrote an example, but look how complicated it looks. You could just say that you play it really, really fast. in a lot of, I've heard people call it a crushed note also, in the sense that you go dum dum dum. So it's just dum really quick. Sometimes you can even hit both of them at the same time and then just let go of the other one. So you can go both 2 down together and then lift the accasciatura off right away as quickly as you can. So it's just like a really fast note that you play. And the difference between the accasciatura and the appoggiatura is the appoggiatura has no cross going through it, like a cross out. And here, see how it's swiped out? It's like crossed out. So the accasciatura is just a really fast note like that. Okay? And it's just whatever note it's actually on. And another important rule is that the stems for these always go up. Okay? They're just like little mini notes that don't really, they don't fit into the rules of, well, they do, but they don't have to follow all the rules that the other notes have to follow. Also, to keep in mind that these notes are played on beat generally. Okay? So this note and this note, when you're playing them, even though they might look like they're coming in before beat, generally you play them on beat. There are some occasions where you're going to play it off beat as well, where you might play it a little bit before the beat, but generally that doesn't happen too much. Okay, so I think that's pretty good. Other than here, this is an example of a double appoggiatura, and so in this case, what's half of this value? An 8th note. And so you divide that between these 2 notes and you get 2 16th notes. Okay, there you go. And so you have half of its value over here and the other half for the other double appoggiatura right there. Boom. So you go do-do-dun, or however you're going to write it out. It doesn't have to go in that order, you can just write it wherever you want, wherever you're going to do it. Generally you want them very close to the note that you're playing. So at most you might want to go like D, E, C, right? You wouldn't want to be like F, G, C. But you could, if you think it's going to sound good. Again, as the composer, it's really up to your discretion. So, anyway, that's this one. Now let's move along to the next example. Okay guys, so here's the next 2. So we've got the Mordent and the Trill. So we're going to start with the Mordent first. Now, the Mordent is an older ornament, actually, I believe, and you usually see it a lot more in Baroque music and a little bit in classical music. I'm not sure if you guys know the terminology of that, but it actually refers to a period of history of music. So Baroque would be a lot of like Handel, Beethoven, or sorry, I was thinking something else. More like J.S. Bach and Handel and those types of composers, like C.P.E. Bach. He was sort of cross in a miniature era called the Rococo period. But anyway, so the Mordent, you're generally going to see it more in the older music, and the trill is more modern, and you're going to see it a lot more in modern music. And the trill is a lot freer and has a lot more involved with it, as you can see with all these charts, whereas the Mordent's pretty standard. So the Mordent looks like a zigzagging pattern, kind of like lightning but going sideways, and then it has a vertical, just straight down cross right through it, so it's crossing it straight down. And usually the Mordent is above the note that it is referring to, or like it's by the note head that that note is supposed to go on to. So when you play it, if it's say above an E, okay, you're gonna go E. How you play it is you go E D E like this. Dun. That's how you do it. Dun. And then if you're going to the C after, it'd be like dun 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 dun. So that's how Mordent sounds. Is it's very quick. So it's on the note that it's written, then goes below, and then goes back. Now, you can actually add a sharp, flat, a natural underneath that Mordent, and it will change the bottom note. So if you now put, say, an E, and you have the same Mordent with a sharp underneath, instead of going to D, so going E, D, E, now it's going to go E, D, E. I can't really sing very well. I can't even sight sing, sadly. That's not very good. But, yeah, I'm guess not very good at that. But anyway, so it's going E to D sharp to E. Okay? So you're going E, D sharp, E really quick instead of the E, D, E. You're going E, D sharp, E. Now, if you have a natural, generally that's because you have some sort of key signature going on or accidental that was before that, and it's canceling that. So say there was a D flat in the key signature or something like that, or there's something before, and you wanted it natural, you could put a natural sign under the Mordent, and it would natural that note for the Mordent only, though. Okay? So that's pretty much standard. I mean, Mordent's pretty self-explanatory. There's not that much to it. So again, it's a decorative note. You see it a lot at the end of phrase endings, like dun 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 dun, and then you'll have a little dun right at the bottom of that phrase. So I can't really remember the whole thing, but yeah, I don't know why I just started singing that. I was just thinking of a Mordent that, you know, I could maybe sing, but maybe not. As you can tell, I'm a pretty bad singer, but that's why I play piano. So, you know, I just I don't sing, just play with the fingers. That, and I've never really had that much vocal training at all, so. Okay, now, over here, we have the trill. Now, this is a huge ornament. Like, this is the most important one you'll probably learn because you see it all the time, especially in Chopin. And it's such a fun ornament. I love trills. Love them so much. They're so cool. Okay, so a trill can actually have so many different meanings, and they're all interchangeable. You could have TR, short for trill, of course, and it could just be above the note. Or you could have TR with this little zigzagging pattern. Notice how it doesn't have the cross right through it like the Mordent has. The trill doesn't have that. So the difference between a trill and a Mordent is always look for that cross going down, and if it's there, then you know it's a Mordent, more or less. Not always though. With this, there's some exceptions to the rule, but anyway. So continuing on, so there's TR for trill, TR with the zigzagging thing. You can even just have the zigzagging thing, and generally the longer the zigzagging thing goes, the longer the trill or the more of the notes that you play. So generally you're usually going to at least do 4 notes, so da 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 da, or like da 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 da. 1, 2, 3, 4. I can't even think of that now. This is my 3rd lesson tonight and my brain is fried. But anyway, So, but if you just play these notes on any instrument that you play, you can hear how it sounds. And okay, so the big difference between the trill and the mordent is the mordent starts on the note and the trill starts above the note. Now, a little side note is that above the note, yes, but after about the 1800s, okay, composers started playing it on the note. So, but the general, I mean, this is like the exception to the rule, and more music is written that you start above the note. So just keep that in mind, but also remember this too, okay? So, now, continuing on, the trill will, for this purpose, it starts above the note. I'm just including that side note, but I'm going to say it starts above the note, okay? Generally. Okay, so now, say you have an E here, so it's going to go F, E, F, E, F, E, F, E. So you look how you're ending on the note that you, the principal or the main note, but you start above the note, okay? Now, key signature goes into effect. So if there's an F sharp in this, you'd be going F sharp, E, F sharp, E, F sharp, E, so back and forth. So however the key signature is affecting the notes, it applies to those as well, okay? Otherwise, it would sound awful if you were playing like a Chopin nocturne and then you started trilling in notes that don't even go in that key. It would just sound horrible. So anyway. Okay, now, the trill also can have extra components to it, and those are the prefix and the suffix. And so they actually look like little like appoggiaturas or whatever, these little tiny notes, and they're usually right around the trill. So you, when you see that it's right beside the trill, then you can know that it's actually part of the trill, and they're just showing you the prefix and the suffix. And so you don't have to, they're not actually accastaturas or appoggiaturas, or I guess they're they wouldn't be appoggiaturas, okay? In this case, they would actually be parts of the trill, and they're just showing you which notes they want you to play. Now, so the prefix, here's an example. So the prefix begins before the trill does, okay? And your trill is going to keep going, and then at the end of the trill you have the suffix. So I've wrote out what it would look like, and so you're going to have to fit more notes in the same amount of space if you have, you know, limited space. So the trill with the whole bunch of zigzaggings, you don't actually count how many there are and determine how many you play from it. That would be crazy, but anyway. But you need to fit them rhythmically in. So whenever you're practicing a piece, you have to kind of feel how many can I play without playing, you know, so quickly that I'm going to mess up or get jammed or whatever. And a note is that some instruments play trills much easier than other instruments. Like, for example, on piano, it's much harder to trill on piano than it is on, say, flute or like ocarina, because you just go do 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 do, and you just lift your finger up, and every time you lift your finger up you're playing a note, and every time you push it down you're playing a note. But with piano you have to push two different notes and go back and forth between the two, so it's more of a motion. Instead of just wagging one finger, you have to go back and forth evenly between the two fingers, and so it can get pretty intense trying to get nice sounding trills on piano compared to when you're trying to do it on like ocarina or like flute or something like that. Anyway, so, but in general you want to play your trills smoothly and evenly, but also you want to, in some circumstances, you're going to want to, you know, bend the time a little bit. Like, it doesn't have to be 100% strict, because a lot of the time trills are more left up to the performer. That's why they're not specifically marked so detailedly, right? They're just like, put a trill in there and do that. So it's like you kind of, there's lots of times where you hear performers slowing down towards the end of the trill. That's why I put this in there too, is I changed the timing at the end so it all fit in the same time as that one half note. So, okay, so we've got the prefix. So it would be, so if you saw a little tiny D, E, and then an E here, we would know that we would go D, E, and then we don't start on the E, we start on the note above, so it goes F. And so now the trill is starting F, E, F, E, F, E, F, E. And then now the suffix is DE, so it's like do 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 do. I know that probably was not even close to pitch perfect, but you get the idea, right? So that's basically how it's going, and you might go a lot faster, like do 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 or whatever, really quicker than I can go. But this isn't singing lessons with Andrea, it's theory lessons, so I don't feel so bad. Okay, so prefix, trill, suffix. Okay, remember, you can have a prefix to a trill without a suffix, and you can have a trill with a suffix without a prefix. That's really complicated, so I'll just explain it a different way. You can have a trill with either one of them, or both. You don't have to have a prefix and a suffix, just both, or one, or neither. Okay? In all cases, though, you need to have the trill, because if you don't have the trill there, then the prefix isn't really a prefix, it's something else. Like maybe a double appoggiatura. Hee. Okay, anyway. So now, there's also other shorthanded ways of writing these that you don't really see very often because the composers generally write in their prefix and suffix, but I thought I'd just include it anyway. If you see this sign, see how it's a little swirl up? So think of it as pointing up. So it's saying, okay, your prefix is coming from a note above. So if you were here and you know you're starting above, like say it was on E, it would be probably G, okay? And then you're gonna go over to the F or whatever. So your prefix is coming from above, and then you're gonna go through your trill. Now, you can also add another line through here. This is where the exception comes into play. You can add the line, and now it actually ends with a suffix. And suffixes almost always go down, okay? Like this one here, so the suffix goes there. So you were going, say your principal note is E, so you're going F, E, F, E, F, E. So the suffix goes down one more note and then back up to the principal note, okay? All right, so, and then with the thing pointing down, that means the prefix is coming from the lower parts, like this one did. Okay, so see, D, E, F. F is the start of the trill. So that would be a lower prefix. So what I wrote out here could have been summarized with just this mark right here. Okay? Yeah, I think that's pretty much good. So just remember that trills aren't solid, very, it's not like they're strictly adhered to. There's a lot of, creativity and bending with rubato, like time slowing down, speeding up, making it sound beautiful. It's not a moment where you're supposed to be like, dot, 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 I am so robotic, I am, it's more like, you'd hear like, like that. So it's slowing down, speeding up a little bit. So, I don't really love to write these out in rhythm because, in a sense, it's not really how you're going to play it. Like, I would never play a trill with a prefix suffix like that. I would have a lot more give and take to it. So, anyway, so those are this example. As you can tell, I'm getting tired. My brain is getting fried, so this is going to be the last one tonight. Okay, I have one more example to show you, and then this last one is called the turn. So let's do that one. Okay, so the last ornament we're going to cover here today is the turn. Okay, so the turn is actually another one of my favorites. I really like these. Actually, in general, I really like ornaments. So fun. Okay, so anyway, so the turn. Now, there's a few different types and styles, and it's actually going to be pretty easy. So, starting here, okay, a turn sort of looks like almost like an infinity sign, but it doesn't quite go to infinity. It just goes far, far to a galaxy far, far away, but not quite to infinity. Yeah, no, that's a bad joke. You're not supposed to laugh. I'm just laughing for my own good here. Okay, so the turn, but you can laugh if you really did find that funny, but whatever. Okay, so E, if we have a trill or a turn going over E, a turn, it's like it's turning around the note, okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to start on F, because it's the note above E, then go down to the main note, then go down below the main note, and then back to it, the main note. So it's like, start above the main note, then go down to it, then go down below it, and then go back. So it's kind of like if you're at your house, and you're looking, I don't know, you're going to wander over to your neighbor's property and then wander back to your property and then wander back over to your other neighbor's property. And then you're like, man, I'm tired. I'm just going to go back to my property and just hang it at my house and, you know, have some tea or something. Or a beer. Or whatever else you like to drink, water. Anyway. Okay, so that's the example or analogy. And again, these look like they're rhythmic, but they don't always have to be played rhythmic. You will not get in trouble if you add a little bit of, you know, pizzazz or rubato to it, okay? But when you're writing it out, generally you're going to be writing it like this, unless you want it to specifically be played like this. See, the thing that's nice about these ornaments is when you write this in the sheet music, you're kind of telling the performer, yeah, you can take a little bit of time here and make this sound pretty and emphasize the E. And you're like, okay. Whereas when you write this out, you're like, I want you to play 4 16th notes and they must be played evenly and nicely. Like that. So it's a difference in the way I would even look at it. I'd be like, okay, play that smooth. Oh, okay, take some time and make it sound pretty. Okay, now, just like the Mordent, how we could have the sharp or the natural or whatever below, the turn, because it goes above and below, you can have a sharp, natural, or flat sign above, or a sharp, natural, flat sign below. So an accidental above or below. So, I mean, you can probably guess that the top one is talking about the note that goes above, and the bottom one is the one that talks about the note going below. So, by the way, this sharp here is actually telling you it's D sharp, not sharping the E, by the way. I just looked and saw that that was kind of unclear, but anyway. Okay, so if we had a sharp above and below and we're on E, so we're going to go F sharp, E, D sharp, E. But if there's a flat or a natural, it'd be different, of course. It'd just be the same. Alright? Okay, so that is the turn and how you'd read it, and then there's a couple other variations. So we have 2 different styles of how we place the turn. So the accented turn starts on the beat. So the very first note starts when that beat actually happens. So if it's like dun, like right away, right on the beat. Now, an unaccented turn can actually start somewhere in between. So it's like you're playing this note here, and then you can play a couple notes through. You basically just have to get through the turn before you get to the next note here. So whenever you see a turn floating and there's no note underneath, always look to the left. And the first note that you see is the note that the turn is supposed to be with. Okay? And if, again, there can be sharps or flats or whatever going on. And that's that. So basically, imagine this is like, it's a time limit to do it in, or this, you know, it has to be done right away. Okay? And again, a little side note, after the 1800s, some composers started the trill on the main note and actually added one extra one, so it became a 5-note or a quintuplet. And so you have to start on, if it was E, you go E, F, E, D, E. So dun, da, 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 dun, kind of like that. Not really. Man, I'm so bad at singing. Anyway, so that's the turn, really cool one. You can actually hear this in the very first couple bars of Chopin Nocturne in E flat minor, or sorry, E flat major, Opus 9, number 2. And you'll hear that right at the beginning of it. It goes like da 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 da. So that da 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 da, that's the trill, or not the trill, the turn. So a great piece to look over if you're trying to learn about trills, turns, ornaments, and stuff like that, especially the modern ones, is look at the Chopin Nocturne in E flat major, Opus 9, number 2. So yeah, okay, so let's do some homework now. Homework. No. Okay guys, so for your homework for this lesson, what I'd like you to do is write out 10 of each of the different trills and ornaments, like the poggiatura, the castratura, the mordent, the trill, and also the turn. So write out 10 of each of them. You can start on different notes, you know, you could write a little melody and write them into it, all that kind of stuff, just so you get used to them. And, you know, label, you know, write down what each one is, maybe make a list of all the different types and just summarize what they're about. And then now I want you to find one example in some sort of written work already existing, like a Bach or a Beethoven or a Chopin, like the Opus 9 number 2 that I mentioned before with the Chopin piece. Yeah, so you can find one example And then when you find that example, then I want you to write out how it would actually be played on a separate piece of music. So take that out and then write it out in the rhythm and everything that it would actually go in. Okay? Alright. So thanks for watching, and I hope you really enjoyed this lesson. This one will be really useful if you do a lot of higher level playing, because you'll be able to interpret your ornaments a little bit easier. Okay, so take care. I will see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye.